Bonjour, everyone. That's a hello. You didn't recognize the accent, huh? Well, it is really great to be here. Thank you. Really, thank you, Vice President, for the incredibly nice introduction, not just to your university and all the commitment that you have made, but also the welcome here at the University of Ottawa. It is a beautiful building. It is stunning, and I understand that it's one great green building, so I celebrate all of your success. Stuart, I'm going to call you Professor McElgie, just to make you one of the crowd while you're up here. Thank you for your introduction. I hope you got through your doctoral thesis, so what the heck are you doing here? That's what I'm sure you did. And I want to also, before we get into the speeches, to just thank Minister McKenna for her tremendous hospitality. You know, it was really exciting when I first got to meet her, which was in Paris for the first time, where she was running around like a crazy woman, but a successful crazy woman. And I'm glad to see, after spending a day with her, she still remains an incredibly successful crazy woman, because we have been running around like crazy together. And she convinced me to come to Ottawa in April because it's so beautiful here and the weather is great in the spring. So while she may be lousy at weather, I'm quite sure she's good at climate, so don't worry about it. There is a difference, as we all know. But it is great to be here, and one of the things to celebrate is really that the U.S. and Canada has one of the oldest and most effective partnerships that there has ever been between two countries, especially when it comes to both the environment and our conservation efforts. And it's a really good thing because we share so many ecosystems. Canada and the U.S. are incredibly proud to both be Arctic nations. And we just met with Inuit leaders to talk about the challenges ahead and our commitment to work with them, not just to consult, but to bring them to the table, to learn from them, and to have them engaged in decision-making. Our shared border includes 4 of the 5 Great Lakes, as well as many important rivers, lakes, waterways, major airsheds, and migratory routes for a host of wildlife species. In short, we sort of hang out together. So it's about time that we reinvigorated our relationship, which we have done, and that we work together to make sure that we protect our ecosystems, not just for our species, but for the species that, frankly, I care about most, my 3 children. So I am so excited to be there. And there are many U.S. Native American tribes and Canadian First Nations whose cultures as well span those national borders. And we owe it to them to listen and to organize and to work together. So at last count, and Stuart mentioned a few of these, our 2 federal governments have already implemented over 40 international agreements that relate to environmental quality in the border area, and over 100 additional agreements have been put into place and action by our states and provinces. That is actually quite remarkable because they have been hugely successful. The one that I know most about is the Clean Air Quality Agreement that was put together, which we celebrate its 25th birthday this year, which is enormously exciting. It's been around for 25 years. That's just a little bit younger than my youngest daughter, and I will guarantee you that it's way more productive than she is, although it's not half as cute. So we have an incredible legacy of cooperation and collaboration that we can build on, and there's no better subject for us to tackle together than the issue of climate change. But it really feels right now like we have a stronger relationship than ever before. We were just talking about the happy dance that we have been doing lately to be able to get to know one another again and to work together in such a strong and hopefully sustainable way. And that's really because the U.S. and Canada are not just partnering to advance our mutual interests, but we're also driving progress in the environment that resonates way beyond our own borders. We are not just working together. We are intending and are already doing efforts that are leading the world together. That's what we should be. That's where we are today. So it's thanks to President Obama and Prime Minister Trudeau that we are here with an already given agenda. We are not here to think big thoughts. We are here to put those thoughts into actions for all of us to move forward on. And we have been prioritizing actions that are critical to our health, as well as the health of the environment and our planet. And this has happened since the earliest days of this administration. And so I am incredibly proud to be able to work with Minister McKenna, who deserves a tremendous amount of credit already in her own life and in her work here. She has been a fearless champion for the sustainability of our planet, and I cannot wait to deliver on the promises of our leaders. So with all that leadership, we have nowhere to go but to continue to working hand in hand to address the challenge of climate change, which, as we can all agree, and if you don't agree, you can find somewhere else to hang out, it is one of the biggest challenges that we face as a planet. And we have gone well beyond documenting the science. What we're really doing now is exploring ways in which we can work together to deliver on that science, to do what the research has told us, the great universities like the University of Ottawa, and make the kind of progress that our kids will look back on and say, you know, you did a good job. You finally stepped up. You move forward at both governments with the kind of vehemence and passion that is commensurate with the challenge and the danger that climate change poses to future generations. So last December was really fun. I am a little bit jealous that Minister McKenna got to go to the one COP that actually produced something. Sorry, I shouldn't say it quite that bluntly, but I've been to many COPs before, and we did not leave with the sense of energy and encouragement by any means that we left with when we were going home from Paris. We had a plane full of people that was so excited and so energized because for the very first time, we virtually had every country in the world stepping up. Not arguing about the science. There were no climate deniers except in the hotel I stayed in, which was really weird. It had a Heartland conference on the first floor. Good news is there were only 12 people at it. So it was an amazing feeling of the fact that we were, for once, going to get together. We were going to really address the impacts of climate change, and we were going to produce air that our children can breathe and be healthy. We're going to deliver on the promises of our national economies being not just low carbon, but the most brilliantly competitive economies in the world. And we were going to protect the health of our families and our kids. So I couldn't be more pleased to be here, but our success in Paris will not happen just because we left that plane feeling good about what we said. We need to continue to feel good about what we are doing, what we are delivering. So one of the biggest promises that we made together between Minister Trudeau and President Obama was to commit that we would deliver on that Paris Agreement for our countries. And we would work together with developing countries to make sure that they had the capacity and the wherewithal to deliver as well. And we are going to move forward jointly on a number of initiatives to make sure that that happens. One of those initiatives is to look at methane. If you wonder why methane, well, it's a highly potent greenhouse gas, and moving on that will reaffirm our leadership on climate. It also will happen to make sure that our ability to continue to rely on fossil fuel will be done in a way that is sustainable as well. When you leak methane, you are highly inefficient, not just highly polluting. And we have to get the methane out of the system. We're going to do it together, and we're going to move on oil and gas. The existing system is not where it needs to be. And it's another example of where our countries can share a common goal and to deliver innovative technologies that will keep moving our economies forward, that will continue to grow jobs and continue to see us have the kind of sustainable economy that can last. And there are others. Just last week, the U.S. and China jointly announced that we'll sign the Paris Agreement a few weeks from now on Earth Day. Canada is going to sign as well. And we are excited to be producing on Earth Day a success story that should be the sign that we are meaningfully moving forward on Paris. We are not just having it sit there, we're signing it and we're moving forward right away because we want to set an example of leadership. This is another way in which we can speak together and demand that other countries step up. We want to move forward on these international commitments as fast as humanly possible. And the more countries like yours and mine that continue to step up and lead the way, the more that others will follow, and the smaller the challenge will be as we move forward in terms of the impacts that will happen if we do not take action today. So along with our federal partners, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, as you probably know, has been central in leading the U.S. effort on climate issues. And make no mistake about it, we're continuing to move forward. Because I want to be very clear. President Obama, his administration, the EPA have absolutely no plans to slow down. When the end of our race happens, we are going to be running faster than at the beginning of that race, because this is a race for this country. This is a race for the future of our kids and the health of our planet. And we are not slowing down. We are keeping up our momentum, and we're going to do that all the way over the finish line, because we need to give the next president a leg up to keep that momentum moving forward. We've already set some very ambitious goals for ourselves domestically, and we're very much on track to realize them. So here's how I know we're going to get there. There is already an incredible momentum in the U.S. marketplace right now that is pushing us to a low-carbon future. Renewable energy costs have absolutely plummeted in the U.S. Globally, since 2009, the average cost of generating electricity from solar panels fell 61%. Last year in the U.S., clean energy technologies accounted for well over half of the newly installed power sector capacity. More than 40% of that was not solar, wind. So if you think it's only solar that's catching up in the market, you are absolutely wrong. We are seeing wind make a comeback. And the U.S. Congress recently issued long-term extensions to our renewable energy tax credit. That pretty much assures that market that it is not just about today, but there are going to be investments over the next 5 years that will continue to drive those costs down, continue to make it more and more viable, and make what used to be an innovation into the staple of how we generate electricity in the United States. And let's not forget about what that means for jobs. Because today the U.S. solar industry is creating jobs 10 times faster than the rest of the economy. So please don't tell me, and all you economists that come here know this, that I have to balance the environment and the economy. There is no balancing, folks. Do both. You can pet your tummy. Maybe I can rub my tummy and pat my head at the same time. I know I can grow jobs and improve the environment at the same time. You know, a new report from our Department of Energy found that an additional 1.9 million Americans are now employed in whole or in part in the energy efficiency sector. And roughly 30% of the 8.6 million employees in today's U.S. construction industry, are you ready for this, are working on energy efficiency projects. If you remember how President Obama pulled the U.S. out of our economic doldrums when he came into office, it's because he invested huge amounts of money in clean energy. So everything I've told you is our success that is getting us to this point forward was done with a concerted understanding that clean energy is the future. It is what is going to grow our economy. It's what is going to keep the United States and Canada in a leadership position internationally. It is not dragging down the economy. It is growing it by leaps and bounds. So these market signals will continue to speak for themselves. And at every step, EPA has been following that market and underpinning it so that the market momentum can keep happening, and more innovation will happen, more investment will happen, more action will happen to address the issue of climate change. We have already moved forward on cars and trucks, and now we're doing even more with trucks than before. Last summer, we launched EPA's Clean Power Plan to cut carbon pollution from the U.S. power sector. That is our nation's single biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions. But it's not just about CO2. We know there are other potent greenhouse gases that need to be addressed. So last week, I signed a proposed rule to expand the list of hydrofluorocarbon alternatives and to phase out certain HFCs in favor of safer options, which we are adding to the rule as well. And in July, I'm going to lead the U.S. delegation at the Montreal Protocol's extraordinary meeting of the parties in Vienna. Why is that important? Because we can make a huge step forward on global HFCs if we pass an amendment in the Montreal Protocol, which we are going to do, that will cut global use and emissions. You know how I know we're going to do it? There is a path forward that has been forged by the United States, Canada, and Mexico. In North America, we speak with a single voice, and we can provide leadership to the world when we do that. We've also been looking at methane very closely, as I indicated before. Now, this past summer, EPA proposed standards to directly reduce methane emissions from the oil and gas sector. These standards are going to move the U.S. towards a goal of cutting methane emissions from the oil and gas sector by 40 to 45% below 2012 levels by 2025. We are going to be finalizing those rules this spring. Now, when we're working hard to expand our voluntary partnerships to cut methane emissions with innovative programs that we've launched, like our brand new Methane Challenge. And there are more than 40 companies that have already signed up, setting strict goals for themselves, setting a pathway forward, showing us how to provide leadership. And at the same time, we are continuing to look at the data and the science, and we're staying vigilant. Because as new data emerges, this is what we're seeing. We need to do more on methane emissions. We need to do more on existing sources in the U.S. because the oil and gas sectors are essentially higher emitters than we have ever understood before. We saw it in our last greenhouse gas inventory. The more you look, the more you will see. So a few weeks ago, alongside your Prime Minister, President Obama announced that EPA will be taking our first steps towards significantly regulating existing sources in the oil and gas sector, regulating them directly to reduce methane emissions. It is an ambitious, but it is also a necessary commitment, and it complements all of the work that we have done so far, as well as the equally bold actions that are being taken in Canada, and we expect to work together. One of the things we're talking about is how to share information, how to look at the technologies that are going to capture that methane, how we stop emitting it and start using it for energy. It is not a waste. It is a wasted product. We cannot afford that waste today. So now, because the World Health Day, I want to say just a couple of words about why EPA has been looking at climate change so directly, not just because it's a problem for the future, but we know it's happening today. And the one thing we know for sure is that it is a public health issue. And believe me, it is a public health issue. Earlier this week, the U.S. federal agencies released a new U.S. climate health assessment. Check it out. We released it on Monday because it confirms that based on the science of what we know today, climate change is already posing real health risks to every single person in our country. If you look as well, it's every single person in your country as well. It gives us a solid foundation we need to better understand how climate is already impacting the health and safety of our families, as well as the impacts we can expect down the road. Let me give you a couple of examples. It shows that the timing of seasonal events is shifting. Duh. And increases in water temperature are altering the seasonal window of growth for harmful bacteria and algae. It finds that people will be exposed to threats they've never experienced before where they live. Geographic distributions are starting to shift for disease-carrying vectors like ticks and mosquitoes, not to mention the many health challenges that we are seeing from extreme weather, increased ozone, increased particulate matter, heat waves, droughts, and flooding, especially on the most vulnerable populations we have, which are our low income, our minority, and our tribes. We have to do better, folks. It's our kids, it's our elderly that are experiencing the damage of climate change today. We cannot let that damage get greater. So while we work to cut emissions and to underpin our shift to a low carbon future, we have to remember that we have an obligation not just to think about this for future generations, but to protect the health of our ecosystems and the health of our people. That's part of our mission at EPA. That's why we've made it a central part of our climate change conversation. We want everyone to know that it matters to them. Everybody's experiencing the impact. Everybody needs to be part of the solution moving forward. Now, Canada has been at our side for so many years throughout so many efforts to protect our environment and our ecosystems. They are lockstep with us and by our side in our climate work. That partnership has put us in an incredible position to be leaders of the global effort that protects our planet and our future generations. That's why I am here today. I am here today to celebrate that partnership, to make sure that the commitment of our leaders gets translated into action plans that you can rely on moving forward. Thank you very much.